The following clip is from the North to South Show, live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we talk SEC football everything. We'd love to have you out next show, but for now, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, and enjoy this clip. This Alabama draft year that they have. First of all, starting off with Nick Saban in general and how he's done in the draft. Since Nick Saban has been in Alabama, 44 different first rounders for Nick Saban. Unbelievable the amount of first rounders that Nick Saban is just able to produce in college football in general. Like, it has been such a treat just watching every single Alabama player that has gone in and out of that program and is constantly going in the draft. But let's talk about this 2017 class, because this may go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest already, class of recruits any single team has brought in. I'll list them off for you. Tua Tagovailoa, Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jedrick Wills, Devonta Smith, Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Alex Leatherwood. That is 8 first rounders. 8 first rounders alone in that 2017 class. Unbelievable. You could pretty much put together again, all these guys are offensive players, so you could put together a really, really good offense. Obviously, you're going to be missing some offensive linemen, but you're going to have Tua and Mac Jones at your quarterback slot. That's obvious there. Your wide receiver position is going to be Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith. And then at the running back position, you're going to get Najee Harris, and then you have Leatherwood, and you have Jedrick Wills as your O-lineman. And that's just first rounders. Like, Alabama still had some really, really high-class talent go in later rounds that would still make a pretty good 2017 class. I just really wanted to highlight on those first-round picks from 2017, because having any class like that, like, look at some classes that don't even have 8 5-stars, and you still classify it as a really, really good class. Imagine 8 first rounders. 8 first rounders is like a 6-star in a sense. If you go into like 24/7, let's say they added a 6-star or something like that, and those were guys that were going to guaranteed be first round picks. You'd have all these guys being 6 stars, so that is absolutely insane there. And what I want to go through in this segment is looking at Alabama next season. We know that they had such a dominant year this year. I'm pretty sure they had 6 guys go in the first round. You had Mac Jones, you had Devonta Smith, you had Jalen Waddle, you had Patrick Surtain, you had Alex Leatherwood, and you had Najee Harris all go in the first round. What is Alabama going to be looking for next year? Who is going to be the first rounders next year for Alabama? Because they have a ton each and every year, but is it going to be as dominant a year for Alabama next season as it was this season? Now, of course, I'm filming this preseason, and many guys' stock changes as the season goes on. Like, especially look at Mac Jones. Would you have taken Mac Jones from that 2019 season and said he would have been a first rounder? No, you wouldn't have, because you didn't see him in 2020. You didn't see the progression of Mac Jones in 2020. So there are definitely some guys that I'm going to talk about here that could jump up. I have a couple locks, and then I have some hopeful first rounders for Alabama next season. So let's start off talking about this lock category for Alabama. First up, I think that this is by far the most obvious guy, and the guy that definitely is expected to go first out of all the Alabama players. I'm going to go Evan Neal, offensive lineman out of Alabama, obviously. He's just a big dude, playing on one of the greatest offensive lines in Alabama ever, with like him, Leatherwood, Dickerson. Evan Neal was a huge part in Najee Harris' success in the rushing game too. Evan Neal, 110% I see is going to be the first offensive lineman off the board. I don't see any way, shape, or form that he doesn't go as the first offensive lineman. I think he's the Penei Sewell of next year's draft. So Penei Sewell obviously went in this year's draft. Evan Neal is the Penei Sewell of the 2022 draft. So I think Evan Neal, by far, number 1 guy off the board for Alabama, number 1 offensive lineman off the board. Next up, my only other lock for Alabama, I only got 2. I'm going to go Christian Harris. Christian Harris is just dominant. He's just a smart defensive ball player, and a guy that, again, many teams are going to be looking at. And it seems like defensive players, if you're an elite defensive player, you are pretty much guaranteed to go in the first round, especially at the linebacker position. So I think Christian Harris, another guy who I would definitely have that lock on to go high in the first round for Alabama. I'm looking early 10s. I wouldn't say he's a top 10 pick, but I'm looking at like 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there. You might see Christian Harris fall off the board there, but I think for sure he is a lock in the first round at Alabama. Let me talk about the hopefuls, because I got 4 guys here. Now, I may be missing some guys. I'm just going with the obvious guys because, again, I'm an outsider looking in. I'm not an Alabama fan. I'm a South Carolina fan, and I know you see the LSU jersey behind me, but I'm just a jersey collector. Love collecting jerseys. But I'm a South Carolina fan, so I'm not an Alabama fan. I'm just a fan looking in. But here are my hopefuls. I'm going John Metchie. Talk about John Metchie. He's going to be wide receiver number 1 for Alabama this season. He's going to be wide receiver, the number 1 pass catcher for Bryce Young in his first starting season at Alabama. John Metchie, as soon as Jalen Waddle went out, he stepped up and he was the second best player on that receiving core for Alabama, of course, other than Devonta Smith, because Devonta won the Heisman, but John played an amazing underroll to what Devonta Smith did last season at Alabama, and you can't just pass to one guy all game, and John Metchie had some amazing games for Alabama this season. Also, I'm really, really high on John Metchie because I'm Canadian, hence why this is called the North to South Show. I'm from Toronto. I'm pretty sure he's from Toronto too, or technically Brampton. So I always love watching Canadian players. We had a ton of Canadian players go in the draft this year, which I'm going to talk about one of them later in my underrated picks segment. But John Metchie, a player I love. And you look at the wide receiver class for next season, you look at the Ohio State guys first and foremost. Chris Olave is going to be up there. You're going to have like Garrett Wilson. Trying to think of other. George Pickens will be up there for Georgia, although he is injured this season. I don't know how that is going to affect his draft stock, but I think John Metchie should easily be a first rounder. I didn't want to put him in the lock, but because there still is a loaded wide receiver class, but I think John Metchie definitely deserves to be a first rounder next year. Another hopeful, this is kind of a long shot more than a hopeful, but I'm going Brian Robinson, obviously the running back at Alabama. He's going to be one of the better running backs in all of college football this season. Now, I think the trend of the NFL draft is really going to hurt him, even though if he does have an amazing season, being a first-round running back nowadays in the NFL football is really, really hard thing to do. Like you see it this year, you only have 2 guys go, and they go in the 20s, mid to late 20s, where you have Najee Harris at, I think, 24 to the Steelers, and then you have Etienne at 25 to the Jaguars. Running back position in the NFL is becoming such a liability, and they just can't trust anyone to stay healthy, especially when they get in the NFL. Look, college ball is a completely different scenario. You're going up against 1 or 2 or 3 guys on average, probably for the average Power 5 college football program, maybe a bit more for the SEC each week. That is NFL talent. In the NFL, you're going up against 11 guys each and every week that is NFL talent. So it's way different at the running back position. Injury is a huge thing, but if if Brian Robinson can have a huge season, outrush Breece Hall, have a better season than Bijan Robinson, have a better season than like Kevin Harris, Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M, you could see him be that first running back taken off the board, and you usually do see those first running backs off the board go in the first round at some point. So Brian Robinson, I'm going a bit of a long shot, but I'm going to have him up there. The next 2 guys I got are both in the secondary. I'm going Josh Jobe and Jordan Battle. It seems like these guys have been around in this Alabama program a long, long time, which they have been. But I think in the secondary especially, it is becoming a key role that tons of teams are taking cornerbacks in the first round. I can't remember how many went. I think 5 went this first round. You had J.C. Horn out of South Carolina going to the Panthers. You had Pat Surtain obviously going to the Broncos. You had Newsome go to, I can't remember where Newsome and Farley went, and then you had Stokes going to Green Bay late. So that's 5. And I definitely think that these are 2 guys who definitely could be some of the better secondary players in all of the draft next season. It depends, because you're going to have, obviously, Derek Stingley be the number 1 guy off the board out of anyone in the secondary. But other than that, I'll try to think of guys in college ball right now, and I think that these guys could definitely be first rounders if they go out and just have an amazing season for Alabama this year. So those are my locks. I have Evan Neal, and I have Christian Harris, and then my hopefuls right now, I have John Metchie, Brian Robinson, Josh Jobe, and Jordan Battle. Again, I'm an outsider looking in. I might have not got everyone that might be on your list if you're an Alabama fan, so I apologize, but that is that for that segment.